In the late summer of 1730, Scots-Irish families made their way west of the Susquehanna, eventually settling on the land we know now as Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. Heirs of William Penn bestowed a land grant to Edward Shippen III, giving him formal ownership of the land of his choice in 1738. With James Bird, Shippen's son-in-law, they designated the land's plots along the current King and Orange Straits. These plots set in stone the newest frontier in Pennsylvania, colonial Shippensburg.
So Shippensburg area, in order to talk about how it was founded, we kind of need to go back to the Pennsylvania experiment with William Penn. Pennsylvania, the idea of Pennsylvania was so popular with Europeans, and the thought that you can come to the colonies here to own land was kind of unique because of the fact that only 10% of English population owned all of the land there. So this idea that you can have land as well as be in your own castle was kind of new. And it was so popular that when immigrants started coming here to the colonies, the idea of Pennsylvania was so popular that they ran out of basically land. So if you were not afraid to risk your life and move into the wilderness of what would become Shippensburg, you can go ahead and do that.
Like many colonial towns, the original settlers consisted of a set of families. These included tradespeople, such as blacksmiths and carpenters, merchants, including those who supplied goods, religious leaders, like the families of ministers or preachers, and independent farming families, and many more. Having different types of families ensured that a town could produce goods, services, and support one another amid the difficulties of colonial life.
When you hear about the 12 founding families that come out into basically any area, there's a reason behind that. And that is because of the fact that you're going to need carpenters, blacksmiths, people of skill and trade, tailors and seamstresses. And then after that, you have to plan out your entire year. And then when you come out to the frontier, you're going to set up a summer kitchen, and then you're going to start building a temporary cabin for you to live out of until finally you get your permanent structure built. So if you're willing to risk that, as well as the fact that you have American Indian out here, that is, some tribes are very friendly, some tribes are not very friendly. This is the place where you can come and make a living and buy land relatively cheap. So in the 1730s, Edward Shippen III and Jacob Shippen, they bought up large tracts of land and they called it Shippensburg. Now the town itself wouldn't be laid out until 1763, but prior to that, they would go ahead and issue out land to basically Scots-Irish of descent. And then from there, they would go ahead and grow a community. Now, the community was very successful in the western frontier here, what would become Shippensburg. But to live in that time period, like I said, it's going to be a little stressful because of the fact that you're going to have several international affairs that are going to take place to the point where it's going to throw North America into a war starting in 1754.
Early Shippensburg was also home to two defensive forts during the French and Indian War. The Shippensburg History Center houses remnants of the two forts, including Fort Franklin, built in 1749, and Fort Morris, built in 1755.
So during the French and Indian War, Shippensburg plays a very important role, particularly with Brigadier John Forbes' expedition. It's going to be a line of a series of fortifications that stretches from Carlisle all the way up to Fort Ligonier, which is just a few miles outside of modern-day Pittsburgh. And the idea with these fortifications was John Forbes, studying what happened with the Braddock expeditions, realized that there was not enough communication lines, supply lines, and stuff like that for that military force. So he went ahead and corrected that to make sure that there was a fortification built by Pennsylvania within basically a day's march. And then as the further they went into the wilderness, they can bring supplies up as well as additional troops. A lot of the artifacts that you see in this room here come from a fortification that was built here Started in the summer of 1755, and it was finished in the spring of 1756 by James Byrd, as well as Robert Morris, the deputy governor of Pennsylvania. But these artifacts, they were found at a place where they think Fort Morris actually stood, and according to the artifacts, most likely that is where Fort Morris pretty much was, which would have been around Bird Street, kind of down where Sheets is today. Fort Morris was just a garrison. It was big enough to hold a couple hundred troops. Any additional troops that would be outside, that's where they would camp at. The fortification was just to preserve and protect the supplies for the British military only. Along with Fort Morris protecting those areas, you also have countless of basically rolling stock, which is your wagons, artillery being cannon, the ammunition wagons themselves to supply wagons, rolling forges for repairs of any metal fixtures on these rolling stock. You would literally have miles upon miles upon miles worth of rolling stock that would be rolling through this area as they were making their way toward Ligonier, which is the last outpost for the British military during the French and Indian War, as far as Pennsylvania in 1758 was concerned.
From 2009 to 2012, teams of archaeologists worked to unearth artifacts at the assumed sites of the forts. Artifacts found included weaponry, household items, and other trading goods. Many of these were brought into the town by travelers on their trading route, which led to the increase of trade through the town.
Braddock's military force in 1755, Shippensburg's kind of on the outer edge of ground zero with the Conacajig area as far as like all the massacres that took place. There was one massacre that took place near Shippensburg. It involved a family, one of the individuals, Cessna, and John Cessna, since he had a French-sounding last name, the American Indian basically let him live, but everybody else in the party had died. Samuel Perry, the owner of what would become Widow's Piper's Tavern, he was massacred by Indians just outside of Fort Loudon, and they found his body basically buried in a shallow grave, which is a few sticks on top. So there was some violence in this area, but most of it was pretty much kept to the Conacajig, going back to like western Pennsylvania area.
Interesting. So after these expeditions, after these wars, what was the life like in Shippensburg for their citizens?
So the time period between the closing of the French and Indian War to the beginning of the American Revolution, Shippensburg is basically seeing growth. It's going to see a lot more commerce, mercantile coming into the area, like I mentioned earlier. It's going to start growing as a community as to how we see it today. If you look at where modern day Sheets is with the old courthouse, which became a courthouse just for 1750 during that 1 year only, that is where the growth of Shippensburg really starts taking off. You finally have side streets that are going to run through the area. You have more and more houses that are being built, pretty much coming down to how you see Shippensburg almost today.
Because of Shippensburg's location, the 1800s brought railroad construction all throughout central Pennsylvania, and some rails straight through this town. East King Street today can be seen bustling with cars and buggies, but in the 1800s, large trains chugged right through on that very road, but then it was a railroad. The Cumberland Valley Railroad was one of many railroads in the area that positioned Shippensburg as a central stop on every traveler's route through Pennsylvania. However, this had its downsides.
The Cumberland Valley Railroad Museum was opened in the spring of 2019. It is housed in a 1956 Penn Central boxcar that was restored by the Cumberland Valley Rails to Trails Council in partnership with the Shippensburg University Applied History and Public History programs and the University Archives. The mission of the location is to use the incredible railroad heritage of the Cumberland Valley and Shippensburg in particular as an engine for sustainable and productive community development. Our goal is not just to tell the area's railroading history, but to use that railroading history in a meaningful way for the needs of the current community. It's important in a variety of different ways. It utilizes the Cumberland Valley Rail Trail, one of the region's most popular outdoor destinations, and leverages that to get the folks who are visiting the trail to think about the multiple different ways in which the history of the area affects their lives even today.
During the Civil War, Shippensburg's location left it in a vulnerable position, not as a battlefield, but through the direct pathway of the Confederate movement during the Gettysburg Campaign. The people of Shippensburg faced uncertainties. Would the troops pass through their small town? Would they cause harm to their community as they did in neighboring towns? When would this war finally be over?
So Shippensburg during the Civil War is interesting because you had numerous men that served in various capacities with the Union Army. One of probably the most famous individuals would be Samuel Sturgis. He grew up in Shippensburg. He attended the military academy. He served as a brigadier general, Beverett, during the American Civil War. If you've ever heard of the Battle of Little Bighorn, after the Civil War was over and the reorganized military, he was brought down to a colonel and given command of the 7th U.S. Cavalry. He, along with my ancestor, Lieutenant Colonel George Custer, both served in the 7th. And of course, the Battle of Little Bighorn, Sturgis wasn't there. He was actually attending a meeting somewhere else. And of course, my ancestor led them into battle, and which would become basically a massacre in itself there. During the Civil War aspects of it, though, in 1863, you're going to see a lot of Shippensburg activity popping up along the official records because of the fact that on June 15th, 1863, learning from the experiences and the failures of the Maryland campaign of the year before that resulted in the Battle of Antietam, General Robert E. Lee and his Confederate Army are going to lead a new invasion of the North. At this particular point, Harrisburg would have been a target, Philadelphia could have been a target. Others felt that maybe Baltimore would have been a target for his military force. He's going to go ahead and dispatch his advance guard under the command of Brigadier General Albert Jenkins. And Jenkins's Confederate brigade is not exactly what I call cavalry or trained in cavalry tactics, but they are mounted infantry. Jenkins's cavalry is going to occupy places like Greencastle, then Chambersburg. He is in the area. That's when the 2 units of the New York State National Guard come down. It's kind of interesting to note that the 8th New York State National Guard from New York were actually wearing their gray fatigue uniforms, while the 71st that entered into Shippensburg was wearing their blue uniforms. And of course, they're here in the valley to stall, not to fully engage, but just to stall the advance of the Confederate Army. They'll do so at Chambersburg on June 22nd. They'll fall back. Half of the 71st, for some reason or another, they missed the orders to board the trains at Scotland to make a way back up to Harrisburg. So they'll go ahead and march back up to Shippensburg, and they'll encamp at the old fairgrounds, and then from there, they'll finally receive orders to go ahead and start marching to Carlisle before the trains came down. And once they are gone, the last remaining force that's going to be in the area is going to be Major William Boyd's New York Lincoln Cavalry. And as a result, on June 24th, there's going to be a skirmish that takes place in Shippensburg through the streets against Jenkins's advance. And as a result, the Union cavalry is forced to give up the area, and the Confederates will occupy Shippensburg later that evening as well as the next day. A lot of personal items are going to be hidden by the townspeople here. That way they didn't get stolen. Some of them would even take logs, hollow them out to put valuables into them. They put them at the bottom of the wood pile, or some of them will wallpaper their fireplaces. That way they can hide stuff into it. And others, such as the Union Hotel, will go ahead and whitewash their sign. That way it doesn't seem like they're being totally supportive of the Union Army. So the Confederate infantry will eventually march into Shippensburg, about 25,000 men total. They'll camp over at Dykeman's Pond, or Dykeman Springs at that time. And then from there, Shippensburg will still be occupied for the next couple days until finally orders were given for the concentration of both military forces at a place called Gettysburg. By July 4th, Boyd's cavalry is back in Shippensburg, patrolling the area to make sure that it's safe for the civilians. That way, if any Confederate raiding parties were in the area, they could be here to prevent that.
Following the Civil War's end in 1865, Shippensburg and other local towns began their journey of rebuilding and regrowth. In the span of 5 years, the town of Shippensburg founded the Cumberland Valley State Normal School, a school for teachers, in 1871. The new school marked a turning point for Shippensburg, establishing it as an education-centered community. With the help of the community, the building known as Old Main became the Normal School. As the school expanded, they began to build additional buildings, including Horton Hall and Stewart Hall. The Cumberland Valley State Normal School continued to grow, and in 1926, it became the State Teachers College at Shippensburg, with the addition of bachelor's degrees in several types of education. In 1939, the school was accredited, and with the addition of a graduate program in education in 1960, it became Shippensburg State College. Many of the students who studied at Shippensburg State College chose to stay in Shippensburg, choosing to build the rest of their post-education lives and give back to the community. Shippensburg is now home to over 5,000 residents, making it not only a college town, but a residential hub as well. Its economy is based on the university, but the university could not succeed without the people of Shippensburg. Those who you see working at the small businesses lining King Street, those who start and raise their families in the neighborhoods, and those you see getting involved in our community in the local government and giving back to create a better future for the next generation. As new construction goes up, the history of this town does not fade away. The people and the spirit of Shippensburg are a reminder of the courageous spirit brought by the original 12 families during the frontier expansion, and it is lived out through each and every person who chooses Shippensburg as their home. From frontier to future, Shippensburg lives on. Nestled in the rolling hills of south-central Pennsylvania lies the town of Shippensburg, a community rooted in history, tradition, and resilience. At first glance, it may seem like just another small American town, but at its heart lies an institution that has helped define its identity for more than 150 years, Shippensburg University. Founded in 1871 as a teacher's college, Shippensburg University began with a simple mission to educate, but over time, it became something much larger. As the university grew, so did the town around it. What started as a small educational institution gradually became the economic, cultural, and social backbone of Shippensburg. Today, the presence of Shippensburg University is felt in nearly every corner of the town, from the bustling activity along King Street to the quiet neighborhoods filled with off-campus housing. The rhythm of life in Shippensburg is closely tied to the academic calendar. When students arrive in the fall, the town comes alive. Local businesses see increased traffic, restaurants fill with conversation, and the energy of a new academic year spreads beyond campus borders. For many local businesses, the university isn't just a neighbor, it's a lifeline. Shops, coffee, houses, and restaurants depend on the steady flow of students, faculty, and visitors. Athletics also play a major role in connecting the university and the community. On game days, Shippensburg transforms. Fans pack the stands, families gather, and a shared sense of pride fills the air. These moments blur the line between campus and community, reminding everyone that they are part of something bigger. Beyond economics and entertainment, the university's great impact may be its role in shaping people. For generations, Shippensburg University has educated thousands of students, many of whom go on to serve not just the nation, but the local region itself. Teachers, business leaders, healthcare professionals, and public servants, many began their journeys right here. In doing so, the university has helped build not just careers, but communities. The relationship between Shippensburg and its university is not one-sided. The town, in turn, provides students with a sense of place, a real-world environment where they can learn, work, and grow. Community events, internships, and volunteer opportunities create a bridge between classrooms learning and a lived experience. It's a partnership that benefits both sides. Over the decades, both the town and the university have evolved. New buildings have risen, programs have expanded, and the student population has diversified. Yet, through all this change, one thing has remained constant: the deep connection between Shippensburg University and the town it calls home. In many ways, Shippensburg is more than just a college town. It's a community shaped by education, strengthened by tradition, and driven by the people who pass through it year after year. For students, it may be a temporary home, But for the town, the university is permanent, a steady presence that continues to influence its growth, its culture, and its future. As long as Shippensburg University stands, so too will the bond it shares with this town. A reminder that sometimes the story of a place is inseparable from the institution at its heart.